All right, let's go ahead and start talking about step 4 now. So we have a truly interactive game. So, we have a player character that we can move. We have a score. We have the treasure sprite as updating as you touch the as there's collisions. So things are really starting to look like a game here, but still there's really no challenge or goal. All right, we're just basically continuing to run up the score, right? But what we want is we want to have some sort of challenge to this or something to strive for. So in this step, what we're going to do is we're going to have a timer that we're going to add. And the ultimate goal here is going to be to try to get as many points as possible before the timer runs out. And we'll see by the end of this whole project, we're going to see that the game will keep track of your high score, so you can. The goal will really be to see if you can beat your high score. Okay, so let's talk about the timer. So we're going to end up adding two new variables that we're going to look at, and one of the variables is going to keep track of how much time is left, and we're going to have another variable that keeps track of how much time has passed. Okay, so so why do we need to keep track of how much time has passed? So let's think about this for a second. So we know from the step 1 discussion that the draw function is called continuously for as long as the game is running, right? So if that's the case, then why don't we just decrease the timer each time the draw function runs? Okay, so let's think about that. We said that the draw function runs about 60 times per second. So let's go ahead. Let's actually take a look at how the timer might look if we just kept track of the of if we just updated it every time that draw runs. Okay, so let me show you some code here. So I'm going to go here, and I have another piece of code that I've written here, and this is just basically a timer, okay? And what we have in the timer, we have a variable that updates by decreasing by 1 every time that the draw function is called. And look how fast that goes. That's really not what we want. We don't want it to decrease that quickly. Okay, so let's go back to our main code and see how we can add a timer that avoids that fast countdown situation. All right, so the first thing we said we were going to do is we were going to add some new variables. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to go back up to where my variables are, and I'm going to add a variable called ticks. So var ticks equals 0. Okay, and the ticks is going to be really the number of times that the draw function has been called. Okay, and then I'm going to add another variable called timer. Okay, so var timer, and this is going to be how much time is actually left on the clock. All right, and I'm going to set this, I'm going to start this off to be 10. Okay, so this is going to be roughly 10 seconds. That's approximately what I want my timer to have on the clock to start off with, 10 seconds. Okay, so um, we said that what we're going to do is in the draw function, we are going to update this timer somehow. So let's go down to the draw function and see how that's going to happen. So I'm going to go to the draw function. Okay. And I'm going to put this at the end after I do all of my score stuff. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the number of ticks. Okay. Ticks plus equals 1. So every time that the draw function calls, I'm going to update the number of ticks by 1. Okay. I'm going to increase it by 1. All right. And then I'm going to have another function called to update timer. So this is a new function that I'm going to write. Okay, so update timer is really going to manage this timer update so you don't have that fast countdown that we saw that we saw here, right? We don't want that. So let's go ahead and let's write our update timer function. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that maybe at the end here. Function update timer. And again, we're not going to pass it any arguments. And we're going to go ahead and let's add to this now. So the idea is that every time that we said that the draw function runs about 60 times per second, all right? And if every time that the draw function runs, we're increasing the ticks variable by 1, what that should mean is that approximately every second that the game runs, another 60 ticks should be added to the ticks variable, right? So it's about every second the ticks variable should increase by about 60, right? Now, if we want the timer to really reflect seconds or be close to reflecting seconds, we have to think about a little bit of math here. So the idea is that if the ticks variable is evenly divisible by 60, then that should be about 1 second that has actually passed. Okay? And again, that goes back to the fact that we said that the draw function runs 60 times per second. All right? So 60 times per second. So that means that every second, that's 60 more added to the ticks. Okay? So what do we mean by divisible by 60? So you want to think back to your basic division here. So if you divide a number, then let's say, for example, we're dividing 10 by 5. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this in a comment here, so we can see it. It's not gonna be part of the code, but I just want to illustrate this. So if I do 10 divided by 5, okay, and in computer science, on the keyboard, the division sign is the /. Okay, so 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? And there is a remainder of 0. It's 2 with a remainder of 0. Okay, so that means that 10 is evenly divisible by 5, because when I divide 10 by 5, there's no remainder. It's a 0 remainder. Okay, so if we did something like 10 or maybe 11 divided by 5, that's equal to 2 with a remainder of 1, right? So 11 is not divisible by 5. Okay, so our goal here, find out if the number of ticks is divisible by 60. Okay, let's see, has a remainder of 0. Okay, so we've I wanted to make sure that we write out what we're trying to do, so that we completely understand what's happening here. Okay, so with JavaScript, not just P5.js, but just JavaScript, any version of JavaScript that you use, we've already seen that we have the division operator, which you're familiar with division from math, but we also have what's called a modulus operator. Okay, so let's see, modulus operator, which returns the remainder of a division problem. Okay, and the modulus operator is basically, it looks like it's really the percentage sign. Okay, so the way we would write this, let's look back at our problems that we had before. So 10 instead of doing 10 divided by 5, if we did 10 modulo 5, instead of giving us 2, that gives us 0, okay? Because it doesn't give you it gives you the remainder, okay? So 10 modulo 5 gives you the remainder of 10 divided by 5, okay, which is 0. So it's evenly divided. Okay, and then if we did 11 modulo 5, that's equal to 1, because 11 divided by 5 gives you a remainder of 1, right? Okay, so now we know that we can find if the number of ticks is divisible by 60. So let's see, if ticks modulo 60 equals 0, then ticks is divisible by 60, and we can assume a second has passed. Okay? So, what we're going to do is I'm going to only subtract from the timer. I'm only going to make the timer go down if ticks is divisible by 60. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, if you need to, pause for a second and look at this explanation, because I'm going to erase this so we can put our code here. Okay? Um, okay, so what we're really going to do is we're going to have an if statement. Okay? So we're going to have an if statement that says if ticks modulo 60 is equal to 0. Okay, and now we have a double equals sign here. All right, so what this double equals sign is, that means that we're checking to see if we're checking to see if one thing is equal to another. All right, so we've seen that a single equal sign is like an assignment operator. So for instance, if we look, well, here in Check Treasure Touch, we have a single equal sign. So single equals is the assignment which sets something equal to something else. So that's what single equals. And then if we have double equals, that's checking to see if two things are equal. So this is basically checking to see if ticks modulo 60 is equal to 0. Okay? Okay, so if it's equal to 0, then what we want to do is we want to set the timer to minus equal 1. Okay? Okay, good. So we've got that now. And now let's go ahead and let's actually output the time to the screen. Okay, so I'm going to outside of my if statement, I'm going to write out text. Okay, so I'm going to use this text function that we saw in the last step. All right, and it's going to be the same basic principle as we did with the score, except this time we're just going to put out the timer variable instead. So time, and then the position we're going to put it is maybe at 10 and 20. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this now. Okay, so now we see we've got the timer up here, and it's going down, and it goes down, by about a second each time, right? But now we got something else going on here. Now it's going to negative numbers, right? Because what's happening is that even when the timer goes down to 0, it's continuing to subtract. So let's see if we can fix that. So really what we want to do is we want to decrease the timer again, if its ticks is divisible by 60, but we also want to check to see if we only want to decrease it if the timer is greater than 0. Like we want to stop it at 0. Okay, so if it's at 0, we don't want to decrease the timer anymore. So what we can do is we can go back up to our if statement. So far when we've been doing if statements, we've been checking for one condition to see if it's true. But we can actually use another operator called the AND operator to check for multiple conditions in an if statement, okay? And what that looks like is the AND symbol on your keyboard, which is should be on the number 7 on your keyboard, and just hold down the shift key, shift and 7, and write two AND symbols. And so this will be if the number of ticks is divisible by 60, and we'll say the timer is greater than 0. Okay, so again, that greater than sign, hopefully you remember from your math studies. Okay, so now with the if statement, we're checking two conditions. We're checking if the number of ticks is divisible by 60, and the timer is greater than 0. So only then we will decrease the timer. Okay, so if we go ahead and rerun this now, we notice that once the countdown gets to 0, it stops decreasing because it's no longer greater than 0, so it won't decrease anymore. Okay? All right, so now we have a timer which will allow us to, in the last step, add some sort of measure for how we've done in reaching our goal of beating the high score. Okay?